The night began like any other for the billionaire King Tun family, full of bright lights, expensive clothes, and the confidence of people who believed nothing in their world could ever go wrong. Their empire was known across the country. They owned hotels, tech companies, luxury brands, and more. People respected them, feared them, and chased their attention. But on this night, something unbelievable happened. Something so unexpected that even the powerful King Tuns could not understand it. Within just a few minutes, their most important business deal, worth $2.4 billion, was gone. Vanished. Destroyed. And no one had an answer. The ballroom was filled with whispers. Investors stood in small circles, confused and alarmed. The media team looked at their phones again and again, unable to understand what they were seeing. The King Tun siblings walked around with fake smiles, trying to calm themselves even though panic was slowly beginning to rise inside them. This deal was supposed to be the highlight of their year. It was supposed to make their empire stronger than ever. Instead, it had collapsed like a house made of paper. But among all the confusion, one person remained completely silent. He stood in the corner of the grand hall, calm as the storm grew around him. His name was Daniel Carter, one of the most respected CEOs in the business world. Unlike the King Tuns, Daniel was not born rich. He did not grow up with servants, private schools, or personal drivers. His life had been a long road of challenges, hard work, and countless struggles. But he had climbed to the top with dignity. And tonight, he watched quietly as the King Tun family tried to understand how their billion-dollar deal had slipped away in seconds. No one knew the truth yet. No one knew that Daniel was the only person who understood exactly what had happened. Because he had made the decision himself. He had ended the deal. He had made the call. And he had done it without raising his voice, without causing drama, without a single threat. In fact, he did not even look angry. He simply looked disappointed. The guests had 1,000 questions. Why would Daniel walk away from a deal worth so much money? Why would a man known for his calm nature and sharp mind make such a dramatic move? Why now? And why so suddenly? Their questions had only one answer, a reason that no one except Daniel and one more person knew. A reason so surprising, so small yet so powerful, that it changed the entire fate of the billionaire family that night. The narrator, watching the scene unfold, could feel the tension hanging heavy in the air. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. People were rushing around with worried faces, trying to make phone calls, trying to fix things that were already beyond repair. But no one could see the truth yet. No one could understand that everything had changed because of a single act, a moment of disrespect that lasted only a few seconds but carried the weight of millions. Daniel stood still, remembering how it all happened. The words. The attitude. The humiliating gesture that took place just hours before this chaos. A simple act, but one that cut deeper than anything he had experienced in years. He had been insulted before. He had faced discrimination. He had survived people doubting him, people mocking him, people dismissing him. But what happened earlier that night was different. It crossed a line he could not ignore. Around him, the music stopped. Waiters froze. Guests avoided eye contact with the King Tun family. Everyone sensed that something big had happened, but the secret stayed locked inside Daniel's calm expression. He did not speak. He did not explain. He simply watched as the consequences of that one foolish moment spread across the room. The King Tun family was used to winning. They were used to being admired. They were used to getting everything they wanted. But tonight, they were powerless. Their faces turned pale as they heard the final confirmation. The $2.4 billion deal was officially cancelled. Minutes ago, they were at the top of the world. Now, they were falling from a height they never imagined. People tried to ask Daniel what went wrong, but he only gave a short, quiet answer: some things matter more than money. And with that, he walked away. No anger. No revenge. Just dignity. The narrator could almost feel the shock running through the room. How could something so big end so fast? What could possibly have caused such a calm man to take such a drastic step? Nobody knew that the cause was something small, something simple, something that should never have happened. A single moment of disrespect. A single careless act by a woman who thought she was untouchable. The billionaire's sister had crossed a line she never should have crossed. And now, her entire family was paying the price. The truth was coming, but not yet. Not here. Not now. For now, the audience only knew one thing: a powerful family had been destroyed in minutes, and only Daniel Carter knew why. The mystery was just beginning. The storm inside the ballroom continued to grow, but Daniel Carter had already left quietly through the side doors. He did not want attention. He did not want people asking him questions or pretending to care. As he walked through the long hallway, his mind wandered back to the moment that had changed everything. But before that moment happened, there was a long history, one that no one in the King Tun family ever understood. Daniel came from a world completely different from theirs. Born in a small neighborhood with broken streetlights and old buildings, he learned early in life that respect was not given freely. He had to earn it. He had to fight for it. His mother worked 2 jobs, and his father drove a taxi at night. Daniel remembered standing by the window as a child, watching his father come home tired, but always smiling. His father had taught him one lesson: son, never let anyone treat you like you are less. Money can buy many things, but it cannot buy respect. Those words lived inside Daniel like a fire. He grew up facing challenges most people never saw. Teachers doubted him. Some people insulted him because of his background. Others looked at him as if he did not belong. But Daniel never allowed bitterness to enter his heart. Instead, he worked harder than anyone else. He studied late at night, took part-time jobs, and pushed himself beyond his limits. Step by step, he climbed. Every victory he earned made him stronger. Every insult made him more focused. And slowly, people started to see his talent. Companies wanted him. Partners respected him. Investors trusted him. Eventually, he built his own empire, one that rose from nothing but hard work, honesty, and dignity. The King Tun family, on the other hand, had a very different story. They came from wealth so old and so large that even they did not know its true beginning. Their father had inherited billions, and his father before him had done the same. Money was never a struggle for them. Everything in their life was easy: private schools, private islands, expensive cars, and people who obeyed them without question. For years, the world treated them like royalty. And slowly, without even realizing it, they began to believe that they were better than others. Among the siblings, one person stood out: Isabella King Tun, the billionaire's sister. She was known for her beauty, her boldness, and her temper. People said her attitude was sharper than her diamonds. She loved power. She loved attention. And she loved the feeling of control. Because everywhere she went, people bowed their heads and smiled. Everyone wanted her favor. Everyone feared her mood. But Isabella had one weakness: she believed that money made her untouchable. This belief shaped her entire personality. She spoke carelessly. She insulted people when she felt bored. She looked down on those who worked for her. And she never apologized. The family always protected her because they were powerful enough to silence anyone she offended. But deep inside, Isabella never understood the value of respect. She had grown up in a perfect bubble of privilege, where no one ever corrected her. Her brother, Adrian King Tun, the head of the empire, knew his sister's behavior was dangerous. He often warned her, "You cannot treat people like this forever." But Isabella always laughed. "Please, Adrian," she would say, "we're the King Tuns. People need us more than we need them." She truly believed those words. When the deal between the King Tuns and Daniel Carter's company began, everyone in the business world was surprised. It was a huge partnership, one that could make both sides even more powerful. But Adrian King Tun knew the truth: they needed Daniel more than Daniel needed them. His success, his growing network, and his clean reputation made him one of the most important CEOs in the industry. Getting him on their side was a rare chance. Daniel agreed only because Adrian promised something simple: respect. For Daniel, deals were not just about money. They were about trust, honesty, and dignity. And Adrian seemed to understand that. The two men met several times and discussed big plans. Everything was moving smoothly. Even the media said the partnership would shape the future. But there was one problem: Isabella. From the first day, she did not like Daniel. She did not like how calm he was. She did not like how people respected him more than her. She did not like how he had built himself from nothing while she had been handed everything. Her pride could not accept a man like him standing at the same level as her family. And Daniel sensed this. He always respected her, but he never felt welcome around her. Still, for the sake of the deal, he ignored the tension. He wanted peace. He wanted progress. But Isabella's dislike only grew stronger. The night of the party, everything finally reached a breaking point. But that part of the story was still waiting to be told. As Daniel left the ballroom and stepped outside into the cold night air, he closed his eyes and breathed deeply. He remembered every moment of his past, every struggle, every victory. And he remembered Isabella's final act, a moment so disrespectful, so humiliating, that the deal he once valued had turned into a wound he could not ignore. Inside the ballroom, the King Tun family still searched for answers. But the truth was simple. This collapse did not start with money. It started with disrespect. And soon, the world would know exactly what happened. The night of the charity gala was supposed to be a celebration. The hall sparkled like a dream, golden chandeliers hanging from the ceiling, soft music floating through the air, and the world's richest families gathering in one place. Everyone looked perfect, dressed in diamonds and designer suits, pretending their lives were free of problems. But beneath all the glamour, tension waited like a silent shadow, ready to rise at the slightest mistake. Daniel Carter arrived with quiet confidence. He never tried to show off his success. He didn't need flashy jewelry or loud behavior to prove his worth. His presence alone demanded respect. When he walked in, people noticed, not because of money, but because of the calm dignity he carried. He greeted investors politely, nodded at old colleagues, and spoke with genuine warmth to the workers who served drinks. That was Daniel. He respected everyone. But someone in the room hated that about him. Isabella King Tun stood across the hall holding a wine glass, her eyes fixed on Daniel with irritation. Her expensive red dress shimmered under the lights, her hair perfectly styled, her diamonds reflecting the golden glow. Everyone admired her beauty, but no one dared to look too long. Her temper was quick, her pride was sharp, and her disrespect was legendary. At first, Isabella had ignored Daniel, pretending he didn't exist. But when she noticed the crowd giving him more attention than her, jealousy began twisting inside her like a thorn. She watched how people listened to him with admiration. She watched how reporters whispered his name. And worst of all, she watched how her own brother Adrian spoke to him with genuine respect. That angered her deeply. "How can they act like he's on our level?" she muttered under her breath. Her friend standing beside her whispered, "Well, he is a big CEO." Isabella rolled her eyes. "Please. Money can buy that title. Anyone can be a CEO." But they both knew that wasn't true. Daniel was self-made. Everyone respected him not because of money, but because of who he was. And that truth burned inside Isabella like fire. As the night moved forward, Daniel walked near the center of the hall to meet Adrian King Tun. They were scheduled to finalize their $2.4 billion partnership in front of the press. Cameras were already waiting. Investors were whispering in excitement. The moment was supposed to be historic. But Isabella had different plans. With a slow, confident walk, she approached Daniel. Her heels clicked sharply on the marble floor, and the guests nearby turned to watch. They knew Isabella well. Whenever she walked with that expression, trouble followed. Daniel noticed her coming and gave a polite nod. "Good evening, Miss King Tun," he said kindly. But Isabella didn't smile. She tilted her chin up slightly, looking at him like he was beneath her. "So, you're the man everyone is talking about," she said with fake sweetness. Daniel simply replied, "I'm just here for the deal. Nothing more." That answer offended her. She hated that he wasn't trying to impress her. She hated that he wasn't afraid of her attitude. "No wonder my brother likes you," she said with a smirk. "Strong men usually don't stay strong for long. Especially when they come from, well, humble places." Daniel understood the insult immediately, but he stayed calm. He had heard worse, much worse, in his life. He wasn't a man who responded to cheap, childish remarks. Instead, he said gently, "Where we come from doesn't decide where we're going." Isabella did not like the wisdom in his voice. She wanted him to react. She wanted to see fear in his eyes, respect for her status. She wanted him to feel small. But Daniel's calmness made her feel small instead. Her pride cracked. Her anger rose. So she stepped closer, breaking every rule of respect, and whispered harshly, "People like you should remember who you're talking to." Daniel did not move. He did not raise his voice. He simply said, "I talk to everyone with respect. I expect the same." That one sentence pushed her over the edge. Isabella lifted her glass of red wine, her hand trembling slightly with anger. People nearby gasped as they realized what she was about to do. But before anyone could stop her, she tilted the glass forward. A splash of deep red wine spilled across Daniel's suit, staining the fabric instantly. The entire room froze. The music stopped. The guests stopped breathing. The cameras turned. Someone whispered, "Oh my God!" Daniel stood there silently, the red wine dripping down his jacket onto the polished floor. His expression didn't show anger. It didn't show fear. It didn't even show surprise. He simply looked at Isabella with quiet disappointment, a look far more powerful than rage. Isabella laughed. A soft, cruel laugh. "There," she said loudly, "now you finally look like you belong." Those words sliced through the silence like a knife. Daniel slowly took a handkerchief from his pocket and wiped his face. Every movement was calm, controlled, dignified. He did not shout. He did not insult her back. He did not touch her. He simply stood there, stronger than she ever expected. Adrian King Tun pushed through the crowd, horrified. "Isabella! What have you done?" he whispered sharply. But it was already too late. Daniel looked at Adrian with steady eyes. "I'm ending the deal," he said softly. A simple sentence. Spoken without emotion. But its impact was louder than thunder. Adrian's face turned pale. The guests gasped. Reporters reached for their cameras. Investors felt their hearts drop. "Daniel, please, she didn't mean," Adrian tried to explain. But Daniel shook his head gently. "Respect is not negotiable," he said. "Not for any price." Then he walked away, calm, strong, unshaken. Behind him, Isabella's smirk disappeared as she realized what she had done. Within minutes, the King Tun Empire would begin to collapse. And the world would remember this night forever. The moment Daniel walked out of the ballroom, the King Tun Empire began to shake. No alarms rang, no buildings fell, yet something much bigger collapsed: trust. And in the business world, trust is stronger than money. When it breaks, everything breaks with it. Inside the hall, Adrian King Tun stood frozen, unable to process what had just happened. His eyes stayed locked on the door Daniel exited through. His heart sank deeper with every second. His mind replayed the scene again and again, his sister throwing wine, her cruel laugh, Daniel's calm decision. Adrian understood instantly that this was not a small argument. This was not something that could be fixed with money or apologies. This was the end of their most important partnership. And it happened in front of the entire city. Investors rushed toward Adrian, crowding him with questions. What happened? Why did Daniel cancel the deal? Is the partnership really over? Do you know what this means for your stock value? But Adrian didn't answer. His throat was dry. His mind was numb. Everything around him sounded distant, like echoes underwater. He looked at Isabella, who stood silently now, her face turning pale as reality hit her slowly. The confidence she flaunted minutes ago had vanished completely. "Isabella, do you understand what you've done?" Adrian whispered. Isabella opened her mouth to speak, but not a single word came out. Her hands trembled. For the first time in her life, she felt fear, the kind of fear money could not control. Around them, the ballroom transformed into chaos. Guests whispered loudly, some recording videos, some leaving in shock. Reporters typed frantically on their phones. The story was already spreading. Within minutes, social media was exploding. Billionaire's sister humiliates CEO. $2.4 billion deal cancelled in seconds. King Tun family faces massive loss. The downfall had begun. Adrian forced himself to step away from the crowd and rushed to a private room to call Daniel. His hands trembled as he dialed the number, hoping, just hoping, that Daniel would reconsider. The phone rang once. Twice. 3 times. No answer. He tried again. No answer. He tried a 3rd time. Still nothing. Adrian's chest tightened. It felt like someone was squeezing his heart slowly, painfully. He knew Daniel wasn't ignoring him out of anger. Daniel was a man of principles. When he made a decision, it wasn't emotional, it was final. Meanwhile, outside the ballroom, Daniel walked into the night with a calm expression. But inside, he felt a familiar ache. Not anger. Not pride. A quiet sadness. He had worked hard for the partnership. He believed it could help both sides. But there was one line he could never let anyone cross, the line of dignity. Daniel reached his car, sat inside, and took a deep breath. His assistant, waiting in the front seat, turned nervously. "Sir, are you okay?" Daniel nodded slowly. "I faced worse." This was expected. Expected. Yes. Because disrespect had followed him all his life. He was used to it. But he no longer tolerated it. Inside the ballroom, the King Tun Empire started to crack. Phone calls poured in, angry board members, nervous investors, confused partners. One investor shouted on the phone, "Adrian, if Daniel pulled out, we're pulling out too." Another said, "We do not support companies that behave like this. Your sister's behavior is unacceptable." And another, "Our company cannot be connected to this scandal. Consider our partnership ended." One after another, partners withdrew. Funds froze. Planned projects were cancelled. Millions vanished every hour. Adrian watched helplessly as his empire fell apart, not because of business mistakes, not because of financial problems, but because of one moment of arrogance. Back inside the ballroom, Isabella's legs felt weak. She sank into a chair, completely silent. Her friends moved away from her, afraid to be connected to her mistake. Her phone buzzed non-stop, messages full of anger and shock. Her social media flooded with comments. How could she do this? She ruined everything. What a shameful act. For the first time, Isabella felt the world turning against her. Adrian walked up to her slowly, his eyes filled with disappointment so deep that it felt heavier than any shouted words. "Isabella, the deal is gone," he said quietly. She swallowed hard. I didn't mean." "You never mean it," Adrian cut her off. "But that doesn't stop the damage." Isabella's eyes filled with tears she tried to hide. She had always believed she could do anything, say anything, treat people however she wanted, and her family's power would protect her. But tonight, she learned the truth. Power protects no one when respect is lost. Hours passed, and the collapse only grew worse. Their company's stock dropped suddenly. Investors held emergency meetings. News channels replayed the humiliation again and again. The King Tun name, once a symbol of power, was now the center of a scandal. Adrian paced the hall, running his hand through his hair, trying to think of a way to fix things. He wished he could turn back time. He wished he could erase Isabella's mistake. But nothing could undo what had happened. Finally, he whispered to himself, "We've lost everything, in minutes." And he was right. Their empire, built over 50 years, started cracking in less than 50 minutes. Meanwhile, Daniel didn't celebrate the collapse. He didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He just sat quietly in his office later that night, looking out the window, thinking deeply. He didn't destroy the King Tuns. They destroyed themselves. Because respect is like glass. Once broken, it can never be the same again. And the worst part, the world had still not seen the biggest consequence of all. That was coming next. The night grew colder as Daniel sat in his office, staring at the city lights outside his window. The world below sparkled with life, but inside him, everything felt quiet, too quiet. He wasn't angry. Anger was temporary, and he had outgrown it long ago. What he felt was something deeper, disappointment. Not just for himself, but for a world where people like Isabella still believed they were above others. He closed his eyes and let the silence settle around him. He had done what he had to do. He had given the King Tun family a chance to show respect, and they had failed. There was no turning back now. Meanwhile, miles away, the King Tun mansion looked nothing like the proud home it once was. Usually full of celebration, confidence, and noise, it now felt heavy and cold. The lights were on, but there was no warmth in them. Every room was filled with quiet panic. Every phone continued ringing. Every screen flashed bad news. Isabella sat alone in the living room, wrapped in a blanket, her eyes red from crying. She had never felt this kind of fear before. Her whole life, she believed she could walk over people and face no consequences. But tonight, life had shown her a mirror, a painful mirror reflecting the truth she had ignored for years. Adrian entered the room slowly, looking older than he had that morning. The weight of the entire family rested on his shoulders. "Isabella," he said softly. She didn't look up. She couldn't. He sat beside her and took a deep breath. "We need to talk." She wiped her eyes but stayed silent. Adrian continued, "The board is furious. Our investors are walking away. Our deals are collapsing. We've lost almost everything today." Isabella felt her chest tighten. Hearing it out loud made it worse. "Adrian," she whispered, "I didn't know this would happen." "I know you didn't," he replied gently. "But that's the problem. You never think something like this could happen. You've hurt many people before. But this time, you hurt the wrong person." Isabella felt tears fall again. "I didn't mean to insult him. I was angry, I guess." Adrian shook his head. "It's not about the wine," Isabella. It's not even about the insult. It's about what it represented. You treated a good man like he was nothing. And the world saw that. For a long moment, there was silence between them. Finally, Isabella spoke with a trembling voice. Do you think he'll forgive me? Adrian looked into her eyes and answered honestly, forgiveness is not the question. The question is whether you've learned anything from this. Back in Daniel's office, his assistant entered carefully, holding a tablet filled with news alerts. Sir, the media is all over the incident. The King Tun stocks dropped 40% in one day. Investors are calling their behavior unacceptable. Daniel nodded without looking up. I expected that. His assistant hesitated, then said softly, they're asking if you want to make a statement. Daniel finally looked away from the window. No. I don't need to speak. The truth speaks for itself. He leaned back in his chair, remembering his father's words. Respect yourself, son. Even if the world doesn't. Those words had guided him through every struggle, every insult, every moment when people tried to make him feel small. And tonight, they had guided him again. The next morning, Adrian woke early and made the hardest decision of his life. He called his car and asked to be taken to Daniel's office. He had no hope of saving the deal, he only wanted to say something important. When he reached Daniel's building, reporters surrounded him, shouting questions. Mr. King Tun, is your empire collapsing? Did your sister really insult Daniel Carter? Is the King Tun family finished? Adrian kept walking, ignoring them. He felt ashamed. When he stepped into Daniel's office, the receptionist looked surprised. Without making him wait, she guided him straight to Daniel's door, understanding the seriousness of his visit. Daniel looked up as Adrian entered. There was no anger in his eyes, just calmness. Adrian, he said quietly. Adrian swallowed hard. Daniel, I didn't come to fix anything. I know the deal is dead. I know we don't deserve a second chance. Daniel said nothing. Adrian continued, his voice heavy, I just came to apologize. Not for the sake of business. For the sake of respect. You didn't deserve what happened last night. You've done nothing but treat us with dignity. Daniel looked at him carefully. Your apology is accepted, Adrian. I never held you responsible. Adrian nodded slowly. Thank you. And I will make sure Isabella apologizes too. She needs to understand what she did. Daniel sighed, the weight of many years behind his breath. This isn't about me, Adrian. It's about the world we're building. People like Isabella need to realize that respect is not optional. It's the foundation of everything. Adrian looked down at his hands. I promise I'll fix my family. Even if I can't fix our company. Daniel gave a sad smile. Some lessons are expensive. Adrian nodded again. Very. He stood up to leave, and Daniel shook his hand. There was no hatred between them. Only understanding. Later that day, Isabella gathered the courage to send Daniel a message. She didn't expect him to reply. She only wanted to say what she had never said to anyone before. Her message was short but sincere. I am truly sorry. Not for the deal, but for disrespecting you. I was wrong. Daniel read the message quietly. He didn't respond, but he felt a small shift inside him, a feeling that maybe, just maybe, she had learned something meaningful. The King Tun Empire continued to fall in the weeks that followed, but something surprising happened too. Isabella changed. Slowly. Quietly. She apologized to her staff. She treated people with kindness. She listened more than she spoke. She tried to rebuild herself, even if she could never rebuild the empire she destroyed. And Daniel? He kept growing. Not because he was rich. Not because he was powerful. But because he lived by a rule that shaped his entire life. Respect is priceless. And the moment you forget that, you lose everything. The world remembered the scandal. But they remembered Daniel even more. The man who walked away from billions, but never walked away from his dignity. And that became the real story.